Welcome back to the channel on YouTube for my post-match review to the Newcastle United 2, Tottenham Hotspur 0 Carabao Cup game. I saw a comment there. Actually, it was a text I received saying it felt like it was men against boys out there today. And I have to say, I cannot disagree. Newcastle made 8 changes. Spurs made a number of changes as well. And sure, you can look back on it and say, maybe the first goal shouldn't have stood and the referee should have controlled that a little better. But also for me, I'm going to stick with it. I don't think any player from my club, I don't want any player from my club to be doing their shoelaces up, their bootlaces up, trying to put their boot on properly while they're defending a corner, especially not at a game at St. James's Park. And I didn't think ever at any point the referee is likely to not only let you do up your boot, but then also let you run into the position. It's just never, ever going to happen. So that was frustrating. And then, of course, Kinski, who I thought looked really comfortable the whole game, apart from then he came out to try and claim a cross. And I think he did that because, frankly, Spurs had been so poor at defending crosses all game that he thought, I'll try and help him out. And unfortunately, it just gave Voltemada an absolute free header into the empty net. And Tottenham Hotspur are out of the Carabao Cup. Realistically, our best chance of silverware to back up the Europa League win from last season. So on that basis, very, very disappointing. I'm going to start, and I did say this on Big Up during my watch along, but I'm going to start by saying this for me is almost, if you're Thomas Frank tonight, you'll be very disappointed to go out, but it's almost like a bit of an I told you so to the corner of the Spurs fan base, who have firstly been calling for the end of Palhinha and Bentancur playing in central midfield together, where I've talked a lot how I think the moment he splits those two up, the likelihood is that we'll get beaten, and that's what happened. And I think it'll be vindication for him, sticking with Guillermo Vicario when a lot of Spurs fans were asking for Kinski to get a go. And in a weird way, you could look at those two things as positives because Tonali ran the game today, and Bentancur played fine, but without Palhinha in that central midfield, we had no control over the game at any point. Now, do I think we're regularly likely to go to St. James's Park and have a lot of control over the game? No. But also, I just think the reason we are third in the Premier League at the moment is because we've got Bentancur and Palhinha playing in that double pivot. And I liked what he did in the last game away at Everton, where he played Simons and Kudus narrow as well. And so we weren't being dominated in midfield so much. So that's almost like I'm saying a positive in that Vicario and I think Palhinha and Bentancur, there's collateral now almost for Thomas Frank to stick with those decisions going forward, and especially in the game against Chelsea at home. Big problems for Richarlison. People already saying in the comments. I'll get to the comments in a minute. I've said it in my videos recently, and I'll say it again now. Richarlison is not a number 9. He is not a number 9. He doesn't have the natural instincts to make the runs to be a number 9. He is okay when the crosses come in. He gets in the right position, but he didn't make the most of his chances today. And we needed him to score some of those chances. He is better, Richarlison, on the left-hand side. And I saw, again, enough from Randal Kolo Muani in the, 10, 15 minutes he played today to say he has to start against Chelsea at the weekend. Randal Kolo Muani must start up front for Spurs against Chelsea at the weekend. His hold-up play is far better. His athleticism running through the middle of the park is better. He can play it round the corner and win fouls. He got Trippier booked tonight. And for me, Richarlison, I think, will be back to the bench as well in terms of negatives. And I see people talking about it in the chat today. A lot of you having a go at Xavi Simons. For me, Xavi Simons is trying too hard. He's trying too hard. He's just got to knock it off. 1 touch, 2 touch, get it in return. You could tell from his touch and his positioning and his movement. You can tell he's got it. I know he's got it, but he's trying too hard. And in trying too hard whilst trying to get up to speed in the Premier League, it's too difficult. And other examples of him trying too hard, ridiculous kind of cross-field passes that he's trying to do when he doesn't have to, and he kicked one off the park in the first half, and just over-hitting passes, under-hitting passes. Just do it easy and get it right and get your possession stats up. Play yourself into the game. One thing I will say positive about Xavi Simons, really good defensively in terms of kind of sliding back to win possession back for Spurs. That is something that he did better today than he's done in his Spurs career so far. So just looking for little positives there. In terms of team ratings, player ratings, sorry, Kinski, unfortunately, because of that mistake, I'll have to give him a 5 out of 10. But, he is very comfortable with the ball at his feet. So if he can improve his decision-making in terms of, commanding his box, which I like him for usually, but he just made that bad decision. Pedro Porro, I'm just going to talk about before that Chelsea game. We are pushing him to his limit, Pedro Porro. And our injuries, and we do have to talk about the injuries. I think we're up to 12 injuries now with Archie Gray and Wilson Odobert adding to them. I said all last season, the season before, I really felt strongly that Ange Postecoglou's training methods and on-pitch methods were responsible for a lot of the injuries. But you have to say now, we're getting just as many injuries. You've got to ask why. There are too many fixtures without a doubt, and that can be something towards it. And we are playing 2 games a week, but we cannot afford this injury crisis. We miss the balance of Destiny Udogie so hard. We miss Christian Romero's ability on the ball, although tonight we missed Mickey van der Ven big time. I think Mickey van der Ven deserved a rest, Kudus deserved a rest, and it's probably the right decision, but God, did we miss Mickey van der Ven today. But Palhinha I thought he played pretty well. Let me know in the comments if you thought he played well. I thought he played well at centre-half, but we missed the balance. If we don't have a single left footer, either at left side of centre-back or at left-back, then it's going to cause trouble. And it made it so easy for the opposition, Newcastle this time, to just defend Jed Spence. Every time Jed Spence got the ball, I think there was only one time where he tried an outside of the boot ball down the line. Every time he got the ball, apart from that just so easy to press him, so he can't go down the line, has to come back, and it puts us under pressure. I thought Danso did fine. I'll give Danso and Palhinha both kind of 6.5 out of 10. I'll give Spence 5.5 out of 10. I do think he is somewhat responsible, although I think the referee made a mistake for that first goal. I think Spence was naive to think that the ref was just going to let him jog back into position. That's never going to happen. In midfield, Bergvall, he started playing his way into the game in the back half of the first half. But did he do enough for me to say, him or Sarr are going to get in ahead of Palhinha or Bentancur? He did not. Maybe at a push, you could say, could Bergvall play in the number 10 ahead of Xavi Simons going forward? Maybe, but, it's hopeful at best. I think he will stick with Xavi Simons in the 10 realistically to try and keep some creativity on the pitch alongside Kudus. Brennan Johnson started this game again. A lot of people in the comments I saw on Twitter and in my comments on BigUp and TikTok tonight saying Johnson and Richarlison are the 2 players who need to be sold. Question is, who's going to pay anywhere near the money to try and get us some of our money back for Johnson and Richarlison? I love them both as people. I do. I love them both off the pitch. Really good characters. And Johnson is still young, but he shanked a ball off the pitch today when we were in a decent position, and he just doesn't do enough. Unless we're playing that kind of Ange ball where we're making chances in at the back post constantly, he's never going to get enough goals. He just really isn't. Xavi Simons, I'm going to have to just give a 5.5 out of 10. Johnson, I'll give a 5 out of 10. Richarlison, 5 out of 10. Very poor, very, very poor across the Tottenham Hotspur team tonight, unfortunately. If you're looking for another positive, those of you who are trying to find glass half full stuff, we will have some match weeks free now to kind of rest some players up, but we need Romero, Solanke and Udogie available ASAP. And Thomas Frank did say they are back on the grass, so that is something positive. Let's have a look what you guys are saying in the comments. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate you tuning in for this post-match review. Ryan James asks, is Solanke dead? No, he's not dead. He's coming back from surgery. But I can see why you might ask, because we haven't seen him for such a long time. At the Fash says Richarlison should never wear the shirt again. He tries hard, Richarlison. He's not a player where, for me, you should say, he should never wear the shirt again. He tries hard, but for me, he's just not a striker. Ryan also says, I've seen nothing from Tell and Xavi. Well, Tell only got 5 minutes, so it seems unfair. At Hobbit says Xavi was bad. And Mughal says Richarlison is a pointless player for us. Again, for me, just not a number 9. This is an understatement from Hobbit. We lacked Kudus' input. Absolutely. We missed Kudus on the pitch today. We can but hope that the fact that he got a rest tonight means he will be back at his sharpest on Saturday against Chelsea at home in a game that we need to get a win. If we can get a win at home to Chelsea, not only will put more space between us and them in the league table, but also, realistically, it would make us, I think, forget about this performance tonight and this result tonight. It's hard to go to St James's Park at the best of times, but when you're missing all of those players, we just never really got a proper foothold. We did play our best football just after they scored their first goal, for sure. For sure we did. And we started popping it about a bit better, but I never felt we were in this. Ricky being sarcastic here, saying Xavi game changer. We've got to give him time, Ricky, and all Spurs fans. We've got to give Xavi time as far as I'm concerned. Ryminster says the play was woeful. The Ironing Shake says we were toothless up top. That's true. Hamish, a bit of a longer point here, says didn't think it was nearly a strong enough team in general to challenge at St James's Park. I think that's a fair point. Not much I think Frank could have done, though. Too many injuries, and we have to rest players like Kudus and Van der Ven. Thank you, Hamish, so much for your very valid and I think kind of calm point there. I agree. We needed to rest those players. We had 12 players out. Listen, if we had a fit squad, and you're never likely to have a totally fit squad, are you? That's not realistic. But if we had a fit squad, then he could have picked and chosen a lot of those players who are playing a lot of minutes at the moment, I think would have come in and we'd have been stronger. Thank you, Hamish. I really appreciate that point. Boy Pink says, I thought Frank was meant to improve players. How can he do that if he's only to play one formation and lineup every game? Well, Boy Pink, thanks for your comment, but I think he tweaked the formation in the last game. He played kind of 2 10s in the last game rather than 2 wide men. So I don't fully agree with that, to be honest. Vizitzo says Richarlison is absolutely horrible. TJO says Xavi was weak. And just a lot of shade on Richarlison tonight. Ryminster saying, I could never understand Richarlison. Absolutely shit. Sorry. For me, again, listen, he tries hard, but he's not a number 9. Simple as that. Martin, thank you for your comment. Says, you have to rotate at some point. The squad cannot fight on all 4 fronts. Spurs had some good spells. That's true. Made some good opportunities in open play. That's also true. And that's, for me, is where the biggest frustration with Richarlison is. Because if we had a proper number 9, if we had a Solanke, and I know we can't still keep talking about if we had Harry Kane, but he would, a proper number 9 would predict some of those balls that came across the box in the first half. From Bergvall, I think a couple of occasions after we'd gone 1-0 down, we started playing better football. We need a proper number 9 who's going to predict them. We miss Solanke. We can only hope that sometime soon, maybe, fingers crossed, maybe Romero, Udogie, Solanke available to be in the squad for Chelsea. I'd love that. But if not, you'd think maybe, hopefully, the Man United game the week after that, maybe it's more realistic with an international break after the Man United game that maybe they'd come back after that. AFX says this competition is useless. Who cares about this effing trophy? I think that's rubbish, mate. Listen, we loved, didn't we, that trophy parade? We loved winning that competition, the Europa League last season, and I think we were trying to win another trophy. But again, I would agree. You do have to rotate at times. Vizizzo says the good thing is at least we have one less competition to fight for, and that was the easiest one by a mile. I think you're being sarcastic there, are you? You should be being. Julian, thank you for your comment. Says Johnson very poor again tonight. Our front 3 is a serious issue for Frank, especially with the 2 massive home games coming up. Yes, I agree, and thank you for your comment. One thing I would say is Kolo Muani is showing me some exciting stuff. So for me, it's a shame for me that it looks like Odebear's picked up an injury, but hopefully it's just a precaution. If we could play Odebear left, Kolo Muani in the 9 and Kudus right at home to Chelsea, I think will cause them trouble. I think Kolo Muani has shown me enough in his hold-up play, so much stronger than Richarlison in terms of hold-up play. So that is something to look forward to, I think, potentially. If Odebear is not fit, I know you're going to think I'm mental for this, but I would be tempted to play Richarlison wide left. I don't want to see Johnson there. I don't think Teller's quite shown us enough wide left yet to start there against a big team like Chelsea. I'd like to see Richarlison play wide left on Saturday if Odebear is unfit, because that would give an opportunity for Vicario to play those kind of long direct balls up to him and he can challenge and then we can win second balls. And it would be a good kind of powerful front 3 alongside Kolo Muani and Kudus. But I know some of you will think I'm mental, but I just don't think he's a number 9. He does work hard for us. He does press hard for us. Hobbit says, I would agree that trying to hard pass from left to right, it's still travelling weighted for a Tottenham player to get it. I don't know. Sorry, that was obviously answering another thing. Systemic Frog says, Richarlison, January can't come soon enough. Ryan James asks, where is Solanke? What's the latest? I think just that he's on the pitch training, and we can but hope that he'll be available soon. But he's barely had any games, so they'll want to put a proper pre-season through him, really. Shauno says, Bergvall did well. I think he did okay, Bergvall. I don't think he did well. I think there was that period of time, again, second half of the first half where he worked really hard. So on that basis, I'll say yes, he did okay. But, you know, to be frank, that midfield, not only did they not cover themselves in glory, but they weren't playing against Joe Linton, Bruno Guimaraes. So imagine if Newcastle had started them, I think it could have got embarrassing. Moogle saying Johnson and Richarlison need to be gotten rid of in January for sure. Systemic Frog says, can we expedite the Vlahovic thing? There is a link to Vlahovic, but I'm not sure about that. I'm really not. Ryminster says we are shit going forward. Hamish says it's so frustrating having all our best players injured. What is going on? Three seasons in a row now. Yeah, I mean, there has been some movement, hasn't there, in terms of Spurs bringing in a new kind of head of everything in terms of medicine and the academy and stuff that was announced last week. So maybe something can change, but I don't know. I can't call it anymore. I thought it was just Big Ange. I mean, so far I haven't seen that there have been that many muscle injuries, which was really the thing we suffered under Big Ange. But obviously we don't know what has happened to Odebear. So let's wait and find out. Systemic Frog also says Spence was almost single-handedly driving us forward for 60 minutes. That's true, actually. That's true. And I didn't mention this, so I should mention it now. Jed Spence did work really hard trying to drive forward with the ball. Often, obviously, always narrow into where a lot of other players were. And Newcastle kind of defended in a 4-5-1 formation. You got to give them some credit. It was incredibly difficult to break them down. But Spence did work hard. Maybe I should up him from a 5.5 to a 6.5 for that, because I'd kind of forgotten about that. Moogle says Simons will be fine. People should be looking at Richarlison and Johnson. Useless. Bazizzo, thank you for your comments. Says with 14 games in 64 days for your information, and we've got 12 injuries. This is seriously looking like a reminiscence of Ange's first season, but much worse. I think the difference is that whereas when we got all those injuries in Ange's first season, he insisted on playing the same way and we lost our form as a result. I think we will still be picking up results under Thomas Frank because he wants us to play more pragmatically. And I think that's the more sensible option. That's how I feel about it, but let me know what you think anyway. Systemic Frog says it's not half full or half empty. We've just been using the wrong glass for 24 years. Mate, we won the Europa League last year. Let's not forget about that. We all had a brilliant night and the parade. Rams says Solanke was not injury prone until he came to Spurs. Pasquale Caparelli says it's nice to acknowledge that injuries last season was nothing to do with Ange's training methods. I didn't say that. I said we're still getting injuries now. I'm not saying that it definitely wasn't that. Let's see what else we got. Power Vibes, thanks for your comments. Says our midfield looks weak without Polina and the many injuries are hurting us. That is to say the least. And Barry says, one of the worst attacks I've seen. Yeah, it's not great. The Ironing Shake says we need attackers in January. We've got a lot of attackers. They're just young and raw. Like think about Odebear and Tell. Just so young and raw. I think we've got to be patient with them. I know it's hard. Joe Blog says, Rishi and Johnson have scored 40 goals and 24 assists between them in the last 2 seasons. They can contribute, but not with this style of play. We made some good chances. If Richarlison's movement had been better tonight, I think we would have scored some goals. So I don't think it's just about the style of play for me. Moogle says players have to be rested. It's only the Carabao Cup after all. Liverpool are an example of how a team can fall. Yeah, that's true. Eugene, thank you for your comments. As we tried with whatever players we had, Rishi more unlucky than toothless, I feel. We move on. Bit of positivity there. I appreciate that. Paxton End, a little less so, says lost it in midfield again, game after game after game. We were outnumbered in midfield. Well, that's why he brought the kind of 210s in against Everton, I thought. I think maybe without Bentancur and Polina today, it was difficult, that's for sure. Just Keith says, why did Bergvall push Dance over the first goal? I didn't really notice that, sorry. Rec 6248 says, Barnaby, I just joined the live, but what did you think about the match? Very disappointing, kind of men against boys, and without, a bit of magic, and we're really missing some magic. We haven't really had any magic this season, have we? No goals in the top bin from outside the box. We've kind of been more lucky than anything else. Own goals is our second highest scorer after Mickey van der Ven this season. And I personally do think we're a bit toothless up front, which is why I'm hoping he'll play Kolo Muani and Kudus and maybe Richarlison on the left at the weekend if Odebear's not fit. But let's see. Ricky Osvaldo says, Bottler Frank out. I think that's ridiculous, mate. I really do. Power Vibe says, last 20 minutes, Frank should have brought on Van der Ven and put in Polina as the defensive midfielder. Well, Van der Ven wasn't even on the bench, I don't think. So that's the reason that couldn't happen, I'm afraid. Foundation is key for a solid base for the team to attack. Too weak was the central midfield. Barry says, a strong squad can cope with injuries. We can't. And Rem agrees with me, someone saying Frank out. That's idiocy. I kind of agree with that. I think Ricky Osvaldo is just being a little bit over the top here, to be honest. The Dutch guy says we need a proven goal scorer. Richarlison just isn't good enough, too inconsistent, and a championship player at best. He's not a championship player at best because he scored goals in the Premier League for Spurs, but also for Watford and Everton. He goes on to say too inconsistent. He isn't up to Premier League standard. I disagree with that. I just don't think he's a striker. I think he's a wide left player. And Rek asks an interesting question. Barnaby, what would you rather, having beaten Newcastle today or Chelsea on the weekend? It's a hard one to say. I'm going to have to just say both. But obviously now we've lost tonight. I think if we do beat Chelsea at the weekend, we'll forget about this. But it's going to be a very hard game. Will it maybe suit Spurs? Because Chelsea will probably want to have a lot of possession. Possibly. Let's see what happens. The Dutch guy says Newcastle have great depth and have a strong front line. We are missing that creative spark. It's all down to Xavi is still adapting to the Premier League. That's true. And also, I'd say Newcastle are a long way further down the project line. They've had, Eddie Howe there for years now. All those players know how to play exactly how he wants them to. And it's still early days for us. Bazizzo says, we've got home games and we need to start having the front line. We need to start having the front foot, especially against weaker sides. Today's performance was poor, but it could have been much, much worse. Guess we have to move on. I agree with that. I'm going to leave it on that one, guys. I agree. We have to move on. Disappointing performance, but always hard to go to St. James's Park. Let's just hope we can keep up that form in the league with a good result against Chelsea at home at the weekend. We'll have our teams back, our players back, like Mickey van der Ven and hopefully some other players as well. Kudus will start. And I'm hopeful we can get a result. Try not to be too despondent, guys. Let's see if we can carry on. We are third in the league, so let's see what happens and hope we can get some of our injuries back. All right, guys, have a good sleep. Come on, you Spurs.